musician,
long-distance kayaker,
a businessman,
she looks after animals,
artist,
author.
We interview remarkable people.
They're talented in so many different areas.
You're listening to The Dialogue.
89.7 FM Eastside Radio.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today, I have Sonia McDonald, who is a leadership entrepreneur, owns Leadership HQ. She's also an author, a speaker, and importantly, a mother. Sonia, thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, I heard you told me that you flew in today, all your meetings were cancelled. This is it. The interview is the highlight of your entire day.
Oh, it was always going to be the highlight of my day.
You get points for that. I'll buy you that drink afterwards, don't worry. Leadership. It's such an interesting term. It's something that people want. You follow, we talk about leaders overseas, we talk about political leaders, CEOs who are leaders. How do you explain what a leader is?
What a great question. I think, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, I actually think and I see that we make leadership bigger than what it is. I think that we look at, like you said, that political arena, those CEOs, and we think leadership is about a role or title. And it's not about a role or title. Leadership is about an attitude. It's about a mindset. It's about a behaviour. So that's why I'm about building leaders everywhere, because I'm really passionate about personal leadership, self-leadership, being that authentic self where you want to be the best version of yourself so you can help make a difference to people around you by being that leader or bringing that leader out within.
Now, my assumption is that a leader is somebody that everybody follows. Is that right? Is that what a leader is? I mean, if you're a leader, is it because you have followers?
Look, not necessarily. I can see what you say, in terms of leaders, having followers, but also followers can be leaders as well. So, there's been plenty of times, and I definitely see myself as a leader. However, there's been plenty of times that I've definitely followed other leaders. So for me, leadership is just being that best version of yourself and understanding who you are and understanding what your values are, understanding, what's important to your purpose, what you're passionate about, but also being kind and compassionate to yourself and to others. So, and for me, I think leadership is about, inspiring others, helping others, but also being passionate about something where and that's why I'm passionate about leadership. And I like that people do follow me in the leadership space because I want people to see leadership differently. So I want to change their mindset. I want to change how they see themselves and see leadership. So that's why, I love the fact that I do have followers when I work in the leadership space, but also I do follow people around me as well because of what they stand for and who they are.
It's an interesting thing to, when you come down to, you call yourself a coach, obviously a leadership coach. You work with different businesses, you work with individuals. And obviously that aspect, being a leader is something that people aspire to. You have people within, corporations that want to be leaders. And the idea is that, if you're a leader, you make more money. But being a leader can sometimes be really lonely. It can be a very lonely, solitary journey. How do you coach people into kind of being able to lead and have power within that without that feeling of isolation?
Gee, that's a great question, because there's been times where even in the space I work in that I feel lonely, and even with, a number of the people that I coach, especially I'd say people that are in, say, roles that are a CEO of a company. I've had CEOs come into my coaching and gone, whoa, I'm trying to be really strong and really resilient, and sometimes I feel like I'm wearing a mask, that I don't have someone to talk to or I don't have someone to open up to because sometimes I don't know the answer to things and I'm expected to know the answer. And I suppose for me, I think, and that's why I'm really passionate about vulnerability and authenticity, is that there's been, and I suppose that's why even on social media, I'm really open about, I don't know all the answers, or I am struggling, or I do have these things going on in my life, because regardless of what role or title you have, we're all human beings, and sometimes by going, you know what, I have stuffed up or I don't know the answer, and being open with that can actually be a lot of strength. So that's something that I'm really passionate about within myself, but also in terms of coaching and teaching others to see the power of that vulnerability.
Let's talk a little bit about teaching. So you grew up in New Zealand, in Wellington, traditional family, couple of siblings. Mum was stay-at-home mum, dad was a builder. You know, you went to school, you were super bright, a massive nerd from what I can understand. You were a nerd, weren't you?
I was a nerd. Yes.
So sorry. But you weren't bullied as a nerd, which is quite interesting. So, I mean, you were an accepted nerd. And that says quite a lot about the environment that you were in. I mean, I think that you know, today nerds are actually quite cool. And that idea of teaching, you know, you went through school and wanted to be a teacher. That's what you wanted to do after school, was be a teacher. But actually, your teachers spoke you out of it.
Yeah, they did.
And so you went into business.
I did.
But then you landed up actually being a business teacher in the end.
I know.
It's funny, when I interview people, I often find that what they really wanted to do, often when they were younger and were derailed, they often find later on in life where they've kind of put the two things together and their passion kind of comes back. Because what you obviously do is massively teaching work. But you were also a massive organizer, so they used to call you Queen.
Yes, that was my nickname at high school.
Why?
I think if I reflect back on that time, yes, I love to organise. So I love to get all my school friends together and organise play dates or movie nights, or let's get a video night together. And I used to love organising events and getting everyone at school together to connect and spend time together.
You have you have a very vivacious personality. So, you know, you walked in here and you gave me a hug as if, you know, you'd known me your whole life, and it's very warm and it's very it's comforting. I asked you the question earlier. I said, you know, you're busy looking after everyone. You look after all these people. You want to help them, give. And I asked who looks after you. And it was you were quiet for a while, and suddenly I think sort of realized that, you know, who does look after you, Sonia?
Yes, the word. I suppose that's why I probably got a little bit emotional when we talked about it before. I have got some close friends who I've known for many years, some from high school and some from my early, 20s that I'm still dear friends with, that are there for me, that help. However, not many, I don't have as many people as and I think that's because sometimes I feel like I need to put on the red Wonder Woman cape, and because of the work that I'm in, I have to kind of, even though here I am being really passionate about vulnerability, have that strength and be that role model. And obviously the last few years with a couple of the struggles that I've had with my daughter has been really, really debilitating and challenging. And I have asked for help a lot more in the past few years than I have ever in my life. And so that's been really interesting the amount of people that have reached out to say they're willing to help because I've asked for help. But prior to that, I didn't ask.
You spend your life teaching people about leadership and obviously growing and being better people. And yet you've had some really big challenges. You know, you sailed through your junior life and school life, and that wasn't a problem. Got into high school, fell madly in love with, the cool guy that you couldn't have because you were the nerd. That sort of unrequited love. Went to university, did a complete 360 and turned into a hot chick. You said, you went in there as a nerd and then all of a sudden had a little transformation. How did you feel after you had physically transformed yourself? And just tell us a little bit about how did you do that physical transformation and why?
I love these questions, Natasha. You're the best. I think I got to high school and I got to university, and I think, I got there, I started to get my confidence back. Also, that boy that I fell in love with in high school, that was kind of that love of my life during high school, I'd caught up with him again. And, I hate to admit that I'd say that I did it for a boy. I wish I could kind of sit here and go, oh, yeah, you know, I did it for myself. And I did, but I also wanted to be hot chick for that boy, you know.
Fair enough.
And I just really started to focus on being that best version of myself. I went to the gym. I remember, you know, exercising, eating really, really healthy. I worked out. I grew my hair really long. I dyed it blonde. And I ended up getting the boy.
Well, I mean, this is a good story, because I think there's so many women out there who look at the boy, think, oh, I'd like that man, or whatever, and then think, well, I'll never get him. But I mean, there's a transformation in all of us.
Oh,
there is a
big time.
transformation in all of us. And I was actually listening to a fantastic, book in the car about having a beautiful mind, and that was all about the way you speak and the way you think, and how you can be so beautiful on the outside, but if you don't think carefully and you don't think well and you don't use your brains, you'll never be attractive on the inside, and actually that will be your outward attraction as well, which is quite interesting.
It's so true, though.
It is true. I thought that book was fascinating. Now, you did get the boy and you did get hot, and then you also landed up going and working in HR. You did this business degree, you worked in HR. Didn't really love the people in that industry, did you?
No, I didn't. No.
Why?
I don't know whether it was the companies I was working with or the industry. However, I found early on in my career, I got into human resources because I really wanted to help people. You know, I love to teach. I love to make a difference. And I found the industry, again, back then it was called personnel. It was really transactional, but also I didn't know if I really was aligned to the value set of people working in human resources. I mean, I think the industry is very different now. I think it's a lot more transformational. It's a lot more around partnering. But back then it was more around that whole policy making, hire and fire. You know, I remember being on Hayman Island working in HR, and every Saturday I'd sit in the office and it was called MBO Day, Next Boat Out Day, you know, and I'd be sitting there listening to stories, you know, and I'd be sitting there listening to these stories of people doing really silly things on the island, and I'd have to ask them to pack their bags and get the next boat out. And I'd think, why am I doing this? This isn't really making a difference to the world. I wanted to leave that legacy. So, you know, I mean, obviously in terms of the work that I do now, I've brought a lot of elements into what I've learnt in human resources. However, it just wasn't really the industry or space for me, because I just didn't really find that I really aligned myself with the people in that industry as well.
Now, you met your husband, or the man that you ended up marrying, on the island, didn't you?
Yes.
And you and he travelled to China together. He was going to work there, and actually it was quite a traumatic experience for you in China, because he didn't turn out to be quite the person you expected him to be, did he?
No, he didn't.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So I decided to put my career on hold to follow his career over there. He was the GM of a hotel over there, and with our little girl Abby, she was about 2 at the time. I ended up getting an opportunity to work over there, which was great, part-time, as a management consultant, and then back into human resources. But unfortunately, he put me through months of hell, and he left my daughter and I really unexpectedly. And he left me with $2,000 in the bank, and I was completely, it was an awful time. More so, I think at the time, funnily enough, and I don't have many memories of that time. However, I've kept in touch with a lot of people from that time, and who keep reminding me they just cannot believe how strong I was. I think I was really resilient and strong for my daughter. Because I wanted to protect her, but I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, because I was 34 at the time, and I had to start all over again.
You came back to Australia, went to go and live on the Gold Coast with your family,
Mm.
which was nice that you had that support. Obviously raising, gorgeous Abby, your beautiful daughter. And started to build your business. Started to build. You went into you worked for a little while in leadership. You said you faked it. You didn't know anything about it. Got a job and then went and read every book you could. But obviously it resonated with you. The whole idea of leadership resonated with you in a huge big way. I mean, enough for you to have started your own business in leadership coaching.
Oh, absolutely. I fell in love with it. I mean, it was phenomenal. All the research and reading I did around leadership, I could just see the difference it was making, not only to my mindset and my confidence, and I could see that this was a way to make a difference. This was a way for me to really help others. And then when I started coaching and teaching and leadership and helping, I remember working mostly on construction sites, I could see the difference it was making to these people on these construction sites. It was phenomenal. For me, it was just so transformational to see the change in them and seeing them become more aware and more confident, and it was life-changing for me and for them, and I knew this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Running your own business is not easy, and being a sole parent is, particularly tricky at the same time. I mean, you're trying to divide your time between a child who needs you, a business that's quite demanding. You've done a lot of speaking engagements all over the country, and also authored some books as well. You've authored 2 books, haven't you?
Yes.
What are they called?
Leadership Attitude and Just Rocket.
And those books obviously are there to, help people grow and change and adopt new ways of thinking. If I were to ask you what the most pivotal single thought that you could put into somebody's head would be, if you could instill that in what would the single most pivotal thought around leadership be that you could, if you could just zap it into someone's brain, what would it be?
Wow, the leadership pill zapping thing.
Yeah.
I wish I could actually market that. I would definitely around leadership is an attitude. So leadership is the most important aspect is to be the best version of you. That leadership isn't a role, it's an attitude. And I've read about it, and I've even seen people talk about it. Like when people are on their deathbed, they don't look back on, I wish I'd worked harder, or I wish I'd done this, that they actually go, I wish I was my authentic self. I wish I was more yeah.
My question to you about the authentic self, which is an interesting question, is what happens for people who don't like themselves? What about people who, I know a lot of people who are financially successful or work quite well, but don't particularly like themselves, don't believe that they're good people, or don't believe that they, so how do you tap into that authentic self and like that authentic self?
That's a really great question. I suppose it'd be interesting to explore, why they don't like themselves, or whether the other thing I hear, and it's interesting, I do hear that quite a bit with the people that I coach, they tend to focus on what's not great about them. No one's perfect, or they'll tend to focus on what's not great about them, or gosh, I definitely have things that I'm sure shit people off. However, I kind of go, I wonder what they're focusing on and why, and to get them. I mean, I'm very much around strengths-based leadership, so focusing on, what your strengths and talents are, because you have them for a reason. So I would be exploring, why they're focusing on the things that and why, and also are the things they don't like about themselves real? Like
Okay,
sometimes we can.
interesting.
Sometimes we can.
That's a really interesting thing. No one's ever said that. I've never heard that before. Is that thing that you don't like about yourself even real?
Yeah,
That's a good point.
Someone said to me the other night, she rang me last week, and I remember I was walking up to the shops to pick something up, and she rang me and she said, I really need your advice. And her name was Sonia. She won't mind me sharing this. So I said, what? And she said, oh, honestly, I go to meetings and I know I'm not good enough. I don't like it about myself. I can't stop thinking about how I'm not good enough. Shouldn't be in the room. And I go, right. So where's the data? Tell me about the data. What data do you have that you're not good enough? And she went, I don't have any data. I said, write down the data. When you've got the data, bring me back. And she never wrote back. And then she sent me
So
an email
great.
going, "You're right. Like, what am I doing? Focusing on
No,
things that
you're
actually,
so, that's brilliant. I think that's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Go and write down where have you found this information about why you're so rubbish. Now, one of the things that you've rocked a whole lot of issues in your life, a whole lot of difficult things. Now, you and I are friends on Facebook. And you put a lot of, your personal life out on Facebook, and not so much personal life, but, what you're currently going through. Your beautiful daughter Abby has gone through the most horrific bullying at school. It's such a sort of topic of conversation at the moment because so many people are experiencing it. But Abby's had a really hard time. Tell me a little bit about how she started getting bullied at school.
She started getting bullied at school due to a post that she stuck on Facebook. And I think the thing that upset her the most, and she started to get attacked on Facebook due to the post, and it was just about Kentucky Fried Chicken. And a number of people started being really nasty to her about this post. She showed me the post. It was very innocent. She just happened to say she loved Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's all she said. And people started going, well, we can see why. And yeah, it's really obvious that you like Kentucky Fried Chicken, and started calling her really nasty things. So she was on the bus on the way to school when it all happened. So she got to school and said to all her school friends, I'm really sad that you're actually saying all these nasty things about me. And it just escalated, and it just became then at school, and they started bullying her at school, and she started becoming really anxious about it, and she wouldn't go to school, and she was too scared to go to school, and I started approaching the school about it. They didn't want to deal with it. This was a few years ago. I think that...
So she's 16 now.
She is, yes.
She was 13 then, so
Yep.
she was in year 7.
Yes.
At that extremely vulnerable age where you need friends and you need community.
Yes.
So this actually sent her she spiraled quite heavily through that trauma, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And how did she start manifesting that physically?
She gained a lot of weight. She started self-harming a lot, and then she tried to commit suicide.
When men and women, I think it's very difficult, when they self-harm, when they cut, why do they cut?
She tells me that she was doing it because she felt that she was letting go of the pain she was feeling.
So that kind of, it's almost like a way of transferring the emotional pain to a physical pain.
Yeah.
Now, Abby obviously has a mother who, strives and has done well from a leadership point of view. And obviously you've shared a lot of that with her. Is it very difficult for you as a mum who is teaching people about how to be resilient and survive and do really well to have a daughter that you feel like you can't help?
Yeah, I'd have to say that's been my most... I'd have to say that's been my biggest challenge for myself, within myself. It's broken my heart.
Do you feel like you're failing?
Yeah, for a very long time I did. But now I feel different about it.
Abby has gone through such a traumatic time, and trying to commit suicide, you've landed up in hospital, you've landed up obviously on suicide watch. It's been really, really difficult. There must have been some extremely anxious moments for you. Have you had anyone to reach out to during that time?
I'd mostly reach out to my best friend, Maria. Luckily, she works in community service, social work, so she's amazing. But I haven't reached out to her as much as I would have liked to, because I just felt that sometimes it was just too hard to talk about.
Now, the wonderful thing is that, there's always little wins in life, and Abby is still with us and is still moving forward and has the most phenomenal mother, and she's actually had a few wins lately, and that has been that she actually went and spoke at the school, And that was a really transforming moment for her, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, honestly, Natasha, it was amazing. She was at my book launch with me this year, and she was phenomenal. Like I was speaking at my book launch, and on the way home from my book launch, she says, "Mummy, I was seeing you tonight speaking, and all those people, they were loving the book and stuff." And she went, "I'm thinking I wouldn't mind speaking." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "I wonder if I could speak about my story to help other teenagers." So I stuck that story on LinkedIn. And then this man reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I saw your post about your daughter's story and how she wants to help others, and I was wondering if she could speak at my daughter's school." And I went home and I mentioned to Abby, and Abby's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, of course." And I spoke to the principal, and she went and spoke in front of 150 girls, and it was life-changing. And even the feedback I got from the school was, they said after she spoke, it just changed the school. Like, she just said that even the girls just won't stop talking about it, and they're being a lot more kinder to each other. They're calling the bullying, and she said it's transformed the school. And they invited Abby to their school formal as well.
Now, this is the best part of the story, because Abby never went to a formal,
No.
obviously, because she dropped out of school. She couldn't cope with the bullying. She couldn't cope with the mental anguish of that. So dropped out of school in 14, and has really, really had such an incredibly difficult time. And then now gets invited to this beautiful formal. And you said that, tell me a little bit about the dress, because the dress is so important for the girls.
It is. It was a it was a beautiful blue lace dress, and I was really, really proud of her, because she was really anxious about the dress, because she felt that she'd gained a little bit of weight, and also with the self-harming, the scars, she was really anxious about that. And the first dress she tried on she just looked like a princess. And she turned up to the school formal with the dress. She owned it. She owned that she'd obviously had some physical things that were evident, and the girls embraced it. And they were so loving and kind to her. And she's now spent all week making little lollipops with little personal messages, like 250 of them, to give to the girls at the school. But honestly, she just looked like a princess, and we couldn't believe that the first dress she tried on was her dress. So
That's such a beautiful note to end this interview on. We've come to the end of an interview. This has been a very powerful interview, speaking to you about things that have been so raw for you, and about your journey with your daughter, especially at a time when it is almost an epidemic at the moment, has been, phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing, and for the honesty, Sonia. It's been great.
You have been remarkable to speak with. Thank you so much.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show. I have been interviewing Sonia McDonald, who is a leadership entrepreneur, author, speaker, and mother. And we will be back next week with another incredible interview.